I know you had mentioned that you have a slide presentation, and so feel free if you want to go ahead and share. I could start by asking you questions, but I have a feeling you're going to answer those questions anyways within the slides. And then afterwards, we are going to have an opportunity um, to ask questions of you. And so those of you who are watching, please feel free to use the Q&A function. That's probably the best option rather than the chat, and then we can go ahead and we can get those questions responded to. So Anna, please feel free to share, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Like I said before, the topic of sound is super important and it's not talked enough. So that's why I reached out to Chris and said, hey, can I come give a little presentation? Let me see. Okay, here we So a picture is worth 1,000 words, but the sound is worth 1,000 pictures. So I like giving this little introduction to kind of show the power of sound and how it can be transported into a place or a situation using sound. I come from traditional filmmaking. I went to film school here in Germany. I studied recording arts in California, but I come from Brazil and now I live in Germany, where I studied film sound and sound design, doing a lot of set work, being a lot on the road and recording stuff, and had a lot of fun during my film school years. And my main passion is telling stories with sound, so that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, and capturing authentic sonic environments or creating authentic sonic environments has been like a passion of mine. And coming from documentary, I really like creating believable worlds. And that's how I started in the whole LBE world. So I founded DELTA Soundworks 2016 with my business partner, and these are like the three areas that we work in. We started originally in XR, so VR stuff, and doing a lot of virtual environments, and then expanded into full dome first of all, so basically like planetarium movies, where it's basically 360, but you're now seeing things on a screen instead of the VR goggles. And since 2020, we've been doing a lot of LBE. That was a pure coincidence how we ended up in that world, because we did the sound design for a trailer for an attraction that had been destroyed from Europa Park. That's Germany's biggest amusement park. And they invited us to do the trailer for the movie, announcing that the ride was going to come back. And they called us because there was a little otter in this trailer. So they called us afterwards, like, hey, we loved the sound of the otter. Could you do that for our attraction? And we're like, okay, but who's doing the whole acoustic theming or the soundscapes? And they're like, oh, we haven't put thought into that. And we threw our name in the hat and got that job. And since then, we've been doing everything for them, from dark rides to pre-shows to domes also, because they do have a dome in the park. We've done VR stuff. They have like free roaming VR, so it's a really fun place to work. So basically, the connecting theme from the three of them for us, and what makes us choose a project, is that you are now placed inside the story. You're not watching the story from the outside anymore. So VR, LBE, and Full Dome, you're now like immersed in that world. So that's for us like what makes things interesting. And while we're talking about immersion, that has become a bit of a buzzword in the last years. But what is actually immersion? A lot of people define it differently. Some define it as, describe it as a certain technology. So when they talk about immersive media, they're talking about LED screens and VR and all that stuff. But other people describe it as a psychological state. So, studies have shown that it's a complex, multidimensional construct and very much subjective. There's been a study from a professor in England, Professor Hyun Kook Lee. He's actually a professor of audio and psychoacoustics engineering, and he proposes this model. This is a simplified version of the model. I'll have a QR code at the end of the presentation where you guys can scan all the studies that I talk about. But basically, the model defines physical presence, social presence, self presence, and involvement as the core dimensions of an immersive experience. And plausibility is also identified as a key element that facilitates the path towards immersion. So today I'm going to focus a little bit on plausibility and how sound can help with that. So plausibility is one of the facilitating paths towards immersion. It refers to how convincing a world is, and it's about making visitors feel like they're part of the environment, which is what we are doing when we create things in the LBE world. So it sparks emotion, it creates a connection to the space, and it creates a sense of presence, and all of this will lead to immersion. So do I believe this world that I'm in? Does it behave like I expect it to? Does it react to me? And believability makes us care. So, how do we create plausibility and an emotional connection to an immersive environment, which is what we are creating? There are many ways, but today we're going to talk about sound, obviously. So, when we design for immersive media, sound becomes the emotional blueprint. It tells people how to feel before they even realize it. So I'm going to jump right into sound design because that's what we are doing, what we are designing in the end. Sound design is going to help create a believable world. So what is sound design? Maybe some of you guys know, but I'll still go back to the basics. It's the art of creating a sonic world. It shapes emotion, builds atmosphere, and makes stories believable. So it traditionally comes from cinema and uses layers such as sound effects, ambiances, and dialogue to create the sonic world. One key figure is Walter Murch. He was an editor who experimented a lot while editing, experimented with sound, and he recognized the power of sound and the power that it has over us as humans and how we can use it as a tool to guide the audience's attention. So he was first credited as a sound designer in Apocalypse Now, and he's kind of like the father of sound design, together with Ben Burtt. Maybe you guys have heard about Ben Burtt. He created the iconic sounds for Star Wars, showing how sound can define characters and worlds. So he spent a whole year recording stuff. Here we can see him recording a bear to create Chewbacca's vocals, and he created the iconic Darth Vader sound, the lightsaber sound, and it's really nice because like you created this whole world that you are immersed in, and from a creative point of view that's like the dream, right? Like here's a world, go crazy, and he got to go crazy for a whole year just creating this world that we admire until today. So how is sound design different for LBE? We actually have the same sound layers. The difference is our environment. So like I said before, we're not watching something from the outside. We're now part of the story, and the sound needs to match. So for the audience to believe that they're inside the story, I need the full sound palette that is available to me. So not just music. That's also something we have a hard time talking to clients that we say we do sound. They immediately associate with music. Music is one element, but we have so many other elements. We have ambiances, sound effects, voice. So much can be done with sound. So when we talk about the full palette, we talk about every sound that makes the scene or the environment feel complete and real, so that you believe that you're in that environment. So the first layer we have is voice. That's an easy one. When we talk about voice in an attraction, we're usually referring to an animatronic, but it can also be a voice coming from a screen, off screen, or even a hologram. And dialogue is extremely important for communication, but can also be used as a design element to kind of create a certain mood, right? Like if you think of Darth Vader, that's such an iconic sound and really important part of sound design, or the Wally voice, for example, that Ben Burt created, that becomes really important to carry emotion to the character and give the character a better characteristic.
Wally. Eve. Eve. Eve.
So much is told just with these small elements. So voice is very important. Us as humans, we connect immediately with the human voice. Next, we have sound effects. So hard effects that are triggered by a motion sensor, for example, a gate opening, or sound effects that are looped, for example, a big machine. Let's see if the sound plays. So first of all, a gate opening. And we have a big machine that is running in loop. So sound effects can also help pull attention to something that you might want the audience to pay attention to. So, for example, if you have a animatronic with a that's talking from a window on the top, and you have the sound of that window opening, then you're gonna point the attention towards up. So that's really important as well. Next, we have ambiances, so that's background sounds that simulate the surrounding. These are used to make the experience feel more realistic or transport riders to a different world. It can be something realistic like a jungle, a fisher village in Indonesia, or it can be a fantasy world like a pirate market or a futuristic sci-fi environment. These are usually loops that run in the background of a scene. And let's see if we can play this. Or not. So that's the ambience we created for a ride that has Nikola Tesla as a theme, so a lot of electricity, and we created a lot of tension with the ambiances to kind of show that there's danger and electricity in the air. So once we've had all these elements, we have what we call a soundscape. So the soundscape is going to tell your audience where they are sonically. It's what will ground them in the scene. It can have different elements. So when we talk about anthropophony, these are sounds made by humans. We have biophony, these are sounds made by animals, and geophony, sounds made by nature. So the more elements that we have, the more lush the soundscape will become, and the more realistic that environment will become. So ideally, we try to combine different elements to make it more believable, because that's how we are in the real world. We have all these different elements that form the soundscape. So at Delta, to create an immersive audio, we focus on two pillars. First, sonic world building, that's how the world behaves sonically, and spatial audio, which is super important for spatial storytelling. So that's what's going to place you inside the story. So with sonic world building, this is where we define how the world will behave. So we have environmental grounding that will establish where the audience is located, be it historically or geographically. It can set an emotional tone, like I said, with the electricity. So not only music can set an emotional tone, but also the soundscape that we're creating. It works really well as a scene extension. That's really interesting, because if we have like a jungle with props and you want to tell depth to that environment, you can use sound like a monkey call in the back that's kind of like full of reverb and echo, and telling you, oh, this jungle's actually goes deeper than I think. And it can define the cultural and character identity of the scene, of the environment. So for me, because I come from documentary, it's really important to have things as authentic as possible. So this ride we did for Europa Park that takes place in Indonesia, I made sure that the background voices were actually speaking in Bahasa and not American English, where it has a different rhythm to the voice. So for me, that was really important to create that authenticity. Come on. Yeah, there we go. The second one that I talked about is spatial audio. That's what places you inside a story. And spatial audio, when I refer to spatial audio, I'm talking about the idea that sound lives in a space. So it's basically sound with spatial information. I'm not talking about the technology. You're going to need the technology, obviously, to create the sense of spatial audio. But I'm first and foremost talking about the idea that we need spatial audio for spatial storytelling. Why? Because we're trying to replicate how humans hear naturally. So we hear things in space, a bird is there, a voice is coming from there, and all that stuff. So we need to replicate that in the world that we're creating. It's really helpful with nonlinear storytelling because you can have things happening at the same time. And it supports, gives multisensory support, right? So it enforces visuals and interactivity. So our eyes can only cover 200%, 200 degrees angle, right? But the ears are hearing the whole time. So that's really important to have these sonic cues placed in space. And again, that's one of the biggest differences between traditional filmmaking and spatial storytelling, which is what we're doing, right? You're not watching everything in front of you, you're in the story, so now you need the sounds to be placed in that space. And we use loudspeakers for that, right? So we can put them separated in a room to create the sense of spatial audio. So our ears are constantly scanning for spatial cues to make sense of the world, and immersive audio brings those cues into your world. So you're going to have the sonic world building where you've defined how that world behaves sonically, and we're going to place them in the space using spatial audio. So I'm going to talk about some examples now that we've worked on. I've already mentioned the Pirates in Batavia, so it's a dark ride, and the ride takes place in Batavia, which is an old name for Jakarta. Batavia was colonized by the Dutch, so it's about their invasion of Jakarta. And so we used a lot of things in Dutch. We used a lot of background sounds with the Bahasa Indonesian language. And this ride caught on fire in 2018. Thankfully, no one got hurt, but they rebuilt it in 2020, and that's how we got involved with this project. So we were invited to create the whole soundscape for the ride. There's a lot of different scenes. We have the loading dock, the drop, a canyon, and lots of action with the pirate battle. I'm going to show some examples one by one. So first we have the loading dock. Then we have the canyon. We have the stilt village. The pirate battle. Okay, everything sounds very chaotic in stereo. It's not wild on location. And that's why spatial audio is really, the spatial audio technology is really important for previewing these kinds of things, because if we can mix it with binaural audio, then you can separate things a little bit better. So that's really, really important. We can talk about more during the Q&A. We have another example, which is the Yomi Adventure Trail. So, for you guys that don't know, Europa Park is named that way because the theme is Europe. So, the different areas are different countries in Europe. So, Batavia is in the Netherlands, and now we are in Austria. So, this is a big playground where kids can run around, and it's located in the Austrian Alps. And the biggest challenge was for us to tell a story about elevation. How do you talk about elevation? It's about 12 meters, which I don't know how much that is in feet, but pretty tall. How tall the playground is, and we wanted to create this sense of elevation using sound. So the kids are exploring this different space, and our idea was to create the sense of height by having the animals as if you were really going on a hike in the Alps. So you start with the frog in the bottom, then goes to the cow and different animals all the way to the tower, the top tower. In the top tower, we have like eagle calls, for example, that gives that impression of, oh, now I'm really high up. Going up. That's a fox, by the way. Baby goat. And a miss. So that was our idea to kind of, yeah, use the sound, and the animals are going crazy. Thank you for the laughs. Yeah, so conclusion, sound contributes to immersion, making the space both more believable and emotion. So that is how immersion becomes real. Once I believe that that space is real, then I'm immersed. But to finish up, I mentioned I would talk about some studies. So everything we've talked about refers to the creative impact, but we also need to show the value, for example, for producers that are willing to invest in sound. What is the value that it carries over time? So here are some studies that prove that sound is really important. First of all, a study that was done with 900 adults, 90% said that music and sound enhance the overall experience. 81% said that they're more likely to return to a place where they had a strong emotional reaction to sound. So, this whole return to a place is really important for us as people that work in LBE, because if we have a sound that is unpleasant, first of all, people will leave because they don't feel like it, it's loud, it's annoying, or if they end up staying, they probably won't come back because they'll have some bad association with that space when it comes to the sound. Research has shown that visuals alone aren't enough. So this study highlighted that immersion isn't driven by visuals alone, but how multiple senses work together. So even with strong visuals, which we invest a lot of time and a lot of money, the sense of presence drops significantly when sound is missing or inconsistent, because the experience stops feeling coherent and not complete. This was really cool. A study I found was focusing more on online meetings during COVID, but they showed that bad audio makes our brain work 35% harder. So your brain is the whole time trying to interpret things. When we talk about bad sound, we can refer to the technical aspect of things. So if something has too much reverb or is too loud or there's unwanted noise, but it can also refer to the creative point of view. So a loop that is badly done, so you have an annoying bird that is looping every 2 seconds and is really annoying you and kind of like tearing you away and distracting you. And it's really relevant if we're talking about educational spaces. So some of you might end up doing stuff for museums, for example, cultural centers, and that kind of stuff. If the information isn't delivered in a good way, people will not retain the information, right? So that's really important that the sound, especially when it comes to dialogue, that the quality is good. And last but not least, you get more bang for your buck because sound is half of the experience and yet it costs a fraction of the total budget. So early planning saves money down the line. And I've been trying to look for some numbers on how much it is part of the budget. When it comes to content. I've read a lot about 10 to 20% of the total ride budget goes to content. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. I don't know if you have those numbers, but that's what I've been reading. And from those, 10% goes to sound. So in reality, we are spending 1% of the total budget of the ride.
And I'll
Correct?
tell you that I don't have those numbers, but that would not surprise me
Yeah.
at
So it's
all. Yeah.
very little and has really, really big impact. So to close up, a picture shows your world, sound brings it to life, and makes it believable. Thank you very much. Here are
Thank
all the
you, Anna.
studies.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, we already got a question. I knew Dominic's great for questions. So,
Very good.
yeah. And so everyone, feel free to submit those questions along. But Dominic asked, when beginning a new project, where do you typically start? Asked differently, what does your process or workflow look like?
So for us, it's really a battle getting sound early into the conversation, but I have felt that other departments say the same. Everyone wants to start as early as possible. So, in
Yeah.
the ideal world, the moment that you have a concept Bible, that's when we want to start the conversation and not down the line when everything has been built and everything has been planned and you're like, okay, I can't do what you want me to do creatively. So ideally, the moment the concept is there is when we're starting to talk. And we do that because we have in our team, I'm the creative director and my business partner is in charge of engineering. So it's really important for you to combine those two worlds. It's so often that sound designers that don't have experience with LBE will just send random sound files to the integrators and like hope for the best, but they don't know the technical side of things. And for you to be able to create this immersive environment and think of spatial audio, think of spatial storytelling, you need to be there from the beginning. Just an example, for example, we talked to a creative director who wanted, we were late to this project, and he wanted this very important story element, which was a energy that would travel from prop to prop. They wanted the sound to literally travel from one side to the other, land in a prop, and then travel to the next one. And they're like, this is really important for the story, really important. I'm like, great, you have one speaker, or you don't have any speakers on your ceiling. Or there's a ride where there's a dragon and we want the heartbeat to be like echoed in this tunnel so that you feel the presence of the dragon, and for you to be able to create this movement you need specific equipment, right? You need not only loudspeakers but the correct amp channels to be able to create that movement. So for us, being there from day one is really important because we're gonna give our feedback as far as the creative perspective, but especially also the technical perspective to say the positioning of the loudspeakers and all that stuff is really important. How do you diagram sound elements?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll go to Josh. Josh put his in the chat. And then we have another anonymous attendee asking a question. So yeah, how do you diagram sound elements when presenting plans to clients? What does the documentation look like?
So I do a lot of, I use a lot of mind map. Like I love working with a mind map. So I usually get the concept and I translate that into a mind map where I create the different scenes. Like for the pirates, I know there's the docking station, there's the loading dock, the jungle, the pirate battle, and then from those scenes, I make sure I define what is ambience, what is a triggered sound, what is animatronic, because you can have so many sound systems happening at the same time. Things coming from the show control, things just being looped in a completely different player. So that's really, from the technical point of view, like I said, really important for you to define. So I like doing mind maps. That helps organize my thoughts, and it's also really easy for the clients to understand which sound elements are needed and for them to give us feedback regarding that.
Wonderful. Next question. What's a new audio technology device that you're excited about coming to market and impacting immersive environmental experiences?
That's a very good question. Going back to the question before, and it kind of goes along the lines with new technology. It's not the newest technology. However, because we got involved with the Europa Park during COVID, we weren't able to be on location. And the reality is that even without COVID, you're not able to be on location because the attraction is still being built. So, because we come from VR in 2020, we had the idea of, oh, let's ask them for a 3D model. Maybe we can bring it into a game engine and kind of walk through the experience in VR. And because we have experience doing sound for VR, we're also experienced in virtual acoustics and
Hmm.
sound simulation. So that is definitely something I haven't seen enough when it comes to producing audio. And it's really, really important that you're in the environment. It's so difficult for you to create sound that is only stereo and it's only on two loudspeakers, but it's going to work totally different within the space. So that's something we've been doing since 2020. We call it the digital audio twin. So we're able to bring a model into a game engine and using virtual acoustics, just how you would use in a game, we can advise our clients as well as far as okay, speakers. You want this movement to be created. This means you need these amount of speakers. And here, listen to this example in VR. Or, for example, hey guys, there's bleeding from one animatronic scene to the other. There's a lot of like
Yeah.
cacophony.
Yeah.
Let's put a wall in between these two scenes and see what happens. And you can do that in real time in VR, where you actually listen to the effect of the occlusion that's going to happen when you put that wall up there.
Mm,
So that's not the newest technology, but I haven't seen a lot of people do that.
yeah. What Kylie asked, what project are you most proud of and what made it such a memorable experience?
Ah, the golden question.
Yeah. Yeah.
A very, very, very good question. Um, I have a project that has nothing to do with LBE. That's from our VR times. We did a learning app for Stanford University for the
Okay.
Children's Hospital, and this app was for doctors for med students to learn about heart defects. So we created a library of heart defects for students to listen through headphones. And as far as creativity goes, that's the most boring sound design you can think of because it's only like lub dub lub dub. But because they have different rhythms when they have heart problems, you have to kind of place those lub dubs in different locations. And it was just really, really cool to see how sound is helping med students. So that was really, really exciting when it comes to VR. But when it comes to LBE, I'm still really proud of our pirates because that was us kind of like pitching our idea of doing the whole sound and something they hadn't thought about. So that was really cool to be able to convince them that like, hey, this whole world needs more sound than just music, and to be able to create this, having been able to create this whole sonic world was really, really cool. I'm still really proud of our dark ride.
Yeah. Awesome. Um, Dominic asked, how do you balance between incorporating enough sound to make an attraction immersive, but not so much as to make it overstimulating?
Yeah, that's a really huge challenge, but it's also something that spatial audio can help a lot because if you have the channel separation, then you can definitely create more movement and make things easier. I think it's not only about the quantity of sounds or the loudness of the sound per se, but more about picking the correct ones and doing a really nice mix that you're not overwhelmed in every sense of the word. But the channel separation, it's a technical thing, but it definitely has an effect on how we interpret sound as humans. There's a reason why we have two ears and why we actually hear things in 3D, because then we're able to kind of hyper focus on different sound sources. And most often than not, in parks, you have mostly things coming out of one loudspeaker, at least here in Europe. You have a lot of like mono sounds where you have like one loudspeaker where dialogue, music, effects, whatever is coming out of just one location, and that makes your brain work harder, like we saw in the study. So using that technical trick definitely helps a lot to create things, to make things less overwhelming
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
guests.
yeah. Um, this person says we are currently working on a project that is creating an immersive experience, and we want to build an outdoor gathering area. How would you suggest tying in audio to that type of space?
Tying in audio, like creating
Yeah,
the audio for that
might
space.
we might need more information.
Yeah, that's a very
Uh,
broad question.
Yeah. What type of outdoor space? What's in the environment? That sort of thing. Maybe I'll go off of that a little bit. Because there's probably students on here that are genuinely interested in working in the audio space themselves. I think there are some others that they might, let's say, be an interior designer or an architect, and their work and their choice of materials will affect the audio, right? So, what are some of the things that you want various disciplines to know? Because I think probably to what you've experienced, if you're working with a creative director that came from the world of, let's say, creative writing or in architecture, like obviously they might they might think of their discipline first.
You'd
So
you'd be surprised at how little architects think about sound and acoustics. It's really, really bad. It's a huge problem. And
I figured, and that's why I
yeah,
wanted to ask it. Yeah.
yeah. You would think they think about it, but if you see like restaurants that are just like cement walls and no carpets, or spaces that are supposed to be pleasant spaces where everything is just like minimalistic and just cement, that affects the acoustics very much. So I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve, what kind of space that is. But definitely having sound as early as possible as part of the conversation is super important, because like we're talking of a project right now that will be for a branding experience center, so for a ice cream brand. And they said that the museum that they're gonna build that space in, when you come in, there's like a huge center where space where it's totally open in every direction, and then you get to go to the different areas of the exhibition. And
Yeah.
of course, if you're thinking of what do I want, what kind of content do I want for that space, that already makes a huge difference. Like not only the acoustics, but if the acoustics are already tough, you might not want to have music, dialogue, and a bunch of action in this area that is anyway already overwhelming, right? So one of the things, like our digital audio twin is really helpful with that, because you can put also these kinds of like sounds for you to test. Okay, let's put the sound of a crowd and hear how that sounds like, and how that's affecting this space where I'm in. But for that, you need someone that understands both sides, right? Not only the content, but the creative side of things. So the earlier we're in the conversation, the better it is. So you're actually designing with those challenges in mind.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. And by
Like
the way,
just
to the person who,
really quick, just one
oh, sorry, go
example.
ahead, go
I
ahead.
remembered the Austria Alps. One of the ways that we solve that problem, for example, it's an open space. It's in the middle of the park. You have music coming from Spain from one side, you have music coming from Greece coming from the other side, and it's all these like stereotypical soundtracks. And we are in the middle of the playground. We're like, okay, how are we going to solve this with the music? Because with the music you also have that problem of like music bleeding into each other, the different soundtracks, and it just becoming a mess, right? So thinking of the content from that perspective, because we have the technical background, we talked to the composer and we said, hey, how about you think of this whole playground area as one big soundtrack, and when we go from one space to the other, you are blending like a stem into another stem. So you have like a whole soundtrack,
Yeah.
but this area will only have yodel with the accordion, and then with the same rhythm and same key. you'll blend into violin and trumpet. I don't know, something like that. So that definitely helped a lot solving that problem because we
Sure.
knew it's an open space. This is going to be really tough. How do we solve this problem? And coming from the creative perspective, but also with a technical background, it's like, okay, this is possible for us to do. So let's blend one area into the other and think of it as one big soundtrack. So it's not like this is a soundtrack, this is another soundtrack. You know what I mean? Like with different keys, with different rhhythms, that
Yep.
just becomes a mess. So
Yeah.
it's
And to the person who asked that question about an open space, obviously it's anonymous, so I don't know who it is. But if you want to provide more information in the Q&A or even in the chat to your specific situation, obviously feel free to. Um, Josh had a question. What is AI doing to your field? Are the tools helping your work, or are companies wanting to take shortcuts more now?
I haven't experienced it yet. Um, It's definitely difficult for a lot of people that are doing like sound editing because the tools are getting really, really good. But we do a lot of sound concepts, and that's just not the kind of thing that AI can replace us yet. But it's definitely way more complex. You know, this background that we have, having the creative perspective, the technical perspective, it's very complex what is being done with sound and LBE. So it's definitely you need to have that background and that
Yeah.
knowledge. And I use AI myself. I use the tools myself for sound editing and all that stuff. I would love to have it help me with like layering things. In the concept phase, I work with mind maps, but I also create like a sound mood board using different sound examples and that kind of stuff. That has been really helpful actually, because if I'm like, okay, I want to design the sound for a ghost train, whatever, give me 5 sound examples of horror movies where there's a house that is haunted, and then it gives me that kind of information. It really helps a lot, but I still need to be able to interpret that information with my creative brain. So it's definitely a helpful tool, and for now, it hasn't given me any trouble.
Nice. Yeah. I'm going to go to Richard's question along those lines, probably along the lines of maybe the example question that you just answered. Can you give an example of a surprise you encountered when hearing your design for the first time in a constructed space and how you pivoted to solve the problem? Good question.
Very good question. By the way, I posted in the chat a YouTube video of our audio twin that you
Thank
can
you.
take a listen to. Be sure to listen with headphones because it's with 3D audio, so you can hear. That is one example. The Austria one, where like, okay, this is a project that definitely the simulation will definitely come in handy because we're like, okay, how do we simulate? It's an open space. Sound is coming from here, music from there. It's gonna be a mess. We really need to be able to simulate this before anything is done. That was something that really surprised us because it is a simulation, right? It's not like a perfect simulation, but the fact that you would be in different spots and actually hear things coming from where the simulation was showing us was really, really surprising. Like, what the hell? Like, it's actually very, very accurate. And for that, for example, the loops, like the orchestration of sounds and the loops that are happening on location, we were definitely able to change those things because we noticed that some loops were really annoying, like some bird that's peeping all the time. Like I said, a bad loop is really annoying and like tears you out of the experience. So that's something that we were able to change on location because it definitely had a different effect. And there's only so much that you can simulate as far as the crowd goes and all that stuff. We try to add all those sounds, but there's other sounds that you don't plan with, right? Like a roller coaster passing by. Like this one is really tricky because it's a playground, but there's a roller coaster passing through this playground mountain area, and there's a water ride, so it's like so many sounds that are disturbing at the same time. For the pirate one, it was really difficult to simulate water because we mixed everything in VR without the sound of the water flow, and the water flow was changing all the time because you can adjust how fast the water is flowing in the ride. So that also made a difference with like this background water sound that was kind of like masking more quiet sounds that we had created. So that was like really important to be on location. Like the VR does not replace being on location. It's really important to be on location, but it definitely helps way more than you creating like sound design just with
Yeah.
loudspeakers and not in the space.
Wonderful. The anonymous person, do you have a recommendation for a recommended website for good sound libraries?
Yeah, there's a sound effect. It's indie sound recorders. It's really nice. You can find everything in there. There's Soundly, which is maybe I should write those things in the chat. Soundly is a big database and it's an app in itself. It's not a website, it's like a
Okay.
standalone app. Um, a soundeffect.com and freesound.org. You need to look for good stuff in there. It's not always the case, but there's a lot of free stuff that you can use for like student projects, for example.
That's great. And this is back to, I think, that first question. I don't know if this is more helpful or not for you. Maybe it is. For an outdoor gathering space like a grassy area with seating, I'm curious how you can use audio to help bring the space to life. Is it just playing background music over the speakers, or would you recommend using ambient sound ambiance or anything else?
I think that really depends on the content. Like what kind of
What's
story are you trying to
driving? Yep.
tell in that space? What is actually important for that space? That's really difficult to answer without knowing.
If this, I am interpolating right now. If it is the project related to, we have students that are working on an outdoor mall environment right now. They're actually working in partnership with a development group in Indianapolis, and they're working on the concepts for a plaza space for people to walk around in this outdoor mall environment. The actual mall itself is called Traction Yards, based off of railroad systems and transportation of Indianapolis. So, they have been developing some fictional story to support the design of this space. So, my take on it would be like go back to your storyline. That's why we always start with story, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Anna.
Yeah, I mean, are we trying to make this environment come alive? Like, is this supposed to sound like some train station or something? Are we doing things that are more abstract? That's going to depend a lot of what you're trying to create with the space. Supposed to be inviting people to come? Is it supposed to be relaxing? Inviting people to stay or just come listen to a story and leave? Like, that really depends. Those are all things that you develop during the concept phase. Like, what are
Yep.
you trying to tell with that story or with that scene?
Yep. Josh asked if someone wanted to do what you do, what kind of degree or training would they need?
Um, Ears. First of all, that's what I tell everyone. It sounds dumb, but honestly, like listening to the world, paying attention to sounds in your environment is like number one, because we're so like visual. We become so visual beings that we forget sounds and paying attention to the world around us. And when we're trying to rebuild a space, we're drawing from those experiences, right, of something that we heard or something that we experienced sonically. When it comes to training, my background is started with music production, but fell in love with sound design on my last semester. I took a class called Audio for Video and was basically just teaching all the different ways of how you can create a soundtrack, a complete soundtrack for a movie. And I just fell in love. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to record sounds. I want to manipulate sound, create new stuff. So I think that's really important to have this technical background, but also good ears. Most sound engineers come from music, so if you have a musical background, that helps a lot. and read a lot about sound design, like from movies, coming from movies.
Mm,
That's really important. Like, how do I tell stories with sound?
yeah.
So check out books by Walter Murch. He's written a couple of books on sound design. There's one by David Sonnenschein. Can post that also in the chat. It's a really good book on sound design. And yeah, lots of resources online as well. Don't know if you want a formal,
No,
formal training kind of
this
thing.
is great. And you've got you're pulling from some good studies I've noticed, which makes me believe you are a secret academic.
I'm not. I'm not.
Mm,
I'm just
I'm
a
just saying, so
closeted nerd.
yeah, yeah. So
No, I think that's
um
like that's really important to like say because like sound is so subjective, right? And then it's
yeah.
really cool to see that there have been studies that prove that it is important and it does have a effect on perception, right? It's not something that we think a lot about. Oh, I want to the question about new technology. I just remembered something. That is something that we're really excited about moving forward because we come from the VR world, aka interactive audio and that kind of stuff. That is definitely a technology that I'm really excited for it to be more used in parks when it comes to sound. So generative sound, and actually having like soundscapes that draw from data, from live data, things that change. So I don't have to build myself a 2 hour loop so that things aren't boring, but I can let like a game engine define that, or
hmm hmm
middleware that is used very often for game sound design. Have things that are created in real time so that things don't sound the same every time you're in an attraction. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something I would love to see more in parks. Some of them are doing more and more, but it's not quite there yet. Yeah.
Yes. Um, Richard asks, any sound software recommendations that you think students should be familiar with? What apps might we encounter when collaborating with teams like yours?
What apps or what software?
Maybe go with software. Like what sound software recommendations that do you think students should be familiar with?
I would definitely recommend Reaper. I'll write that. Reaper is a digital audio station similar to Pro Tools or Logic, but it is, I think, if I'm not mistaken, free for students, and the paid version is like $60, which does not compare to a $1,500 software from Avid. And there's a lot of flexibility. There's tons of tutorials online for Reaper. So with Reaper, you can play a lot with sound manipulation and all that stuff and cut sound. I would also definitely recommend getting into interactive audio. So something like Fmod, which is a middleware that you can use to create interactive audio. I think things are going towards interactive audio more and more, and there's going to be more and more interactivity in parks. So if you have knowledge in that area, you definitely have an upper hand. When it comes to spatial audio, I'll post something in the chat as well. If anyone is interested in spatial audio, we created a free online course. This is EU funded. It's a full course on spatial audio. So not only the technology, but also the aesthetics and what it's all about, where it comes from. And you can definitely go through the course, download the lessons as PDF, or do it on the browser. It's a really cool course we worked on.
Very cool. That's great. So we are at 12:58, so literally, 2 minutes left for the hour. Any burning questions from anybody? Oh, Josh has one. I knew it was going to happen. What accessibility concerns do you consider when it comes to those hard of hearing, deaf, or those who are blind or have visual deficiencies?
That's a very, very, very good question.
With 2 minutes left,
It's a tough one to answer in 2 minutes.
and that's
Um,
it. That's all you get.
that's all I get. Thanks, Josh, putting me on the spot here. I think the language thing, like having different soundtracks and having more headphones. That's definitely something that will help more and more in parks, like not depending on loudspeakers where sound is really far away and you have to kind of like more focus more on the sound. I think the more we bring headphones into parks, the easier it's going to get. It's not that easy as far as maintenance goes and hygiene and all that stuff. But I think that's definitely gonna bring a new layer of what we can do with sound, be it with soundtracks that are explaining different things for visually impaired, or having things for neurodivergent people where the soundtrack is not as overwhelming as the original ones that are going through the loudspeakers. Those are definitely things that we need to consider moving forward, but for that, you need the technology to be there, and it's not there yet. But that's definitely also accessibility to different languages, right? Like the Europa Park, they do everything English, German, and French, and that makes it really difficult. That kind of like excludes certain guests at certain times in certain rides because you're going through the ride and then it's all in French. And I think Disney Paris is also a lot in French. So the more headphones we bring into parks, the easier it's going to get, I think.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. Really, really good. I really, really appreciate you just even taking the hour with us, Anna, and a lot of good questions, really, like
Really good questions.
as well. And so, yeah, and appreciate the reach out. The wealth of knowledge that you provided is great for our students. I'm going to check out this course myself too. So,
Yeah,
but
worth
yeah,
it.
we'll definitely keep in touch. I imagine we're going to be having you join us again here at some point during the academic year if you're willing to do so. Do you ever make it out to IAPA or anything in Orlando?
I haven't been there yet, no, but it's definitely on
Okay.
the list. Yeah.
Well, if you ever make it out, we're
If you
definitely
come to
there.
Europe, let me know. There's enough IAPA here too.
That's true. That is true. So,
A little bit warm
um,
right now.
oh yeah, I mean we're talking 100 right now in Indianapolis, so yeah, I feel it. But yeah, let's keep in touch, and we really, really appreciate the time today. This was
One
great.
last thing, if anyone
Yeah.
has questions, just connect with me on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
shoot me an email. I'm always happy to answer questions. Follow us on all the socials, Delta Soundworks, and there's enough videos and stuff out there.
Awesome. This is great. Well, thank you
Awesome.
again. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Have a
Have a
great
great
evening
day.
for you. Yeah. All right.
Bye bye. Oh, one raised hand? No. Too late.
No. All right. All right.
Bye, guys.
Thanks all.